Hello everyone, welcome back to Scarecrow Joe's studio. It is officially halfway to Halloween, so it's time to put on the gas and start making some really cool props and Halloween art. Yesterday I was down in my basement and I came across this little package here that I didn't even know I had, so who knows how long this had been sitting down in the basement, stuck in between a bunch of other stuff. So basically, it's this package of different Halloween blade or weapon accessories. These are cheap plastic, and right over here it is stamped, you probably can't see it, but made in China. So I have this cleaver, meat cleaver. Let's see, big old blade here. I don't know, this might be like some other kind of giant chef knife or something. Or serial killer blade. This is another kind of like a mini machete type thing. And then this really interesting little sickle or scythe. I don't even know. Anyway, oh, what's this? A snack? A treat? Do not eat. Fine. It's a trick. Anyway, these are basically cheap plastic things, and they're basically they're trash. Or are they? I don't think they're trash, actually. I mean, obviously they're cheaply made. I think I can make them better. You know, with a little paint and a little fabrication can go a long way on these, I think. First thing that I'm going to do here is they have these edges where basically it created edges all the way around. Even the handle has this weird little plastic edge there. I'm going to get rid of all of those edges by just taking some heavy grit sandpaper and just sanding them down. And then, I mean, the handles are okay. The handles do have some texture in there, and that's completely fine. And they have like these little holes where, you know, a screw or a bolt would go in there, and they have little bolts up here, and that's fine. I like that. That's cool. So my idea is, after I sand these ridges here on all of them that I do not want, I'm going to go ahead and maybe sand a little bit in some of the handles, kind of rough it up a little bit, you know, so that they're not so perfect looking, because obviously if you're a serial killer or something like that, these are going to be well used and worn down a little bit on the handles, and obviously on the blades themselves. So first thing I'm going to do after sanding those ridges is I'm going to go ahead and paint them a flat black. The paint I'm going to use is a paint and primer mix, and I think that's going to be a good option to get the color down on these and cover up all of this other paint, you know, that just doesn't look right, doesn't look good. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to do those two things off camera. I don't think you need to watch me sand and then just paint the whole thing. Okay, so these have been painted with the flat black paint and primer mix that I had, front and back. The next step here is to paint these blades silver. All right, my cover of silver paint on here is dry. Now, it'd probably be a lot easier if you get a pan of spray paint. Take them outside, spray paint them, but the weather is really bad here, so I did not want to go out in bad weather and spray paint. So I chose the method of using the paint and primer mix for the black, and then I'm just hand painting everything. But the next step, we're going to move on in making these look a little old and rusty. For the blade itself, to make them look a little bit rusty, it's pretty simple. What I have here is some sand. So dirt or sand, if you don't have access to dirt or sand, you could also use cornmeal. So anything that's a little granular. This sand here I actually took from the local golf course in one of their sand traps or sand pits out there. So it's kind of an unusual looking sand, but I think this is going to work perfectly fine. Burnt umber paint, and then I'm going to add some white glue. I happen to have some Mod Podge here, but if you don't need to go out and buy Mod Podge for this. Any white glue will do, or even like a wood glue. So anything like that, white glue or a wood glue will work. You don't have to use Mod Podge. So I'm gonna start out by just putting some Mod Podge in there, because I want this to be sticky, and the Mod Podge is really going to help it to stick to the surface of these blades. So I'm just mixing up the Mod Podge in with the sand. I want to get that all mixed up. Use crappy paint brushes for this so that you could just toss them and not have to worry about getting them clean. But you do want to make sure that your sand or cornmeal or whatever dirt that you're using is thoroughly mixed with the Mod Podge. I think that's pretty good. And I'm going to go in with some of this burnt umber paint. I'm going to do a little bit at a time. And I'm just going to add that to this mixture. All right, so I have that mixed up. I'm going to go into strategic areas, but before I do, I want to point something out to you. This area up here, where it looks like it's more heavily textured, that's where previously in the introduction of this video, I showed you the stamp on there that was in this plastic that said Made in China, and then it had some numbers underneath there. I sanded that off as best I could. But the sandpaper left this texture, which is perfectly fine because that's going to add to this project. But you could do that. You could go in and sand off anything that has words on it if you want to. So I'm just going to strategically, in places where I want some rust to be happening, I'm going to apply this onto there. My black paint that's underneath the silver kind of ran in some places. So I think that's a pretty good area to add some texture for rusting. You can have areas that maybe are a little bit thicker, say up in this bolt area. I'm just going to put in some stuff that's a little heavier. If you feel like you're not able to apply it as well, you can add a little bit more paint to thin it out just a little bit more. Or you can add some glue. So that's the idea. You know, you put rust spots in using this texturing, just kind of strategically. If you want some down on the edge of the blade there. I think maybe there would be some rust happening like around the handle. You could have some thicker raised areas and then just some thinner areas here and there. But this is what I'm going to do to all 4 of these blades. And I'm going to turn them over and do the other side as well. And then I'm going to hang them again and let them dry. And then once they are dry, we can come back and start actually painting these areas to make them look like rust. The other thing that you could do is you could take a blade and you can make chips into the edge of your blade, or maybe on the top of the blade. And that will make it look a little more used and antique it a little bit more too. All right, my textured mixture of some paint and glue with sand that I applied in just haphazardly in areas on all of these blades. It's dry and looks pretty good. So keep in mind, less is more, I think, in when doing stuff like this. You don't want to overdo it with the rust texture. So just want to give you a closer look And something that I did not mention is these metal hooks here, or it's just bendable wire. They're not even hooks. It's just some bendable wire. And each one of these blades had a little plug that was inside all the handles. And it was just a plastic, plug that was inside there. I just punctured all the way through so that I could attach this bendable wire, and that allows me to paint on both sides of these, and then when they're wet I can just hang them on something. And I hung them on my wire art rack, so it allows it to dry hanging. So that's what you see there. But let's move on now, and we're gonna make these areas here look more rusty. So I actually took the time and I looked up photos of rust on the internet, just to kind of make my random and weird internet search history even more random and weird, because why not? Anyway, so these are the colors that, were found in the photos of metal or steel that had a rust quality to them. So I'm going to start out with these three colors here. This first one here is a burnt sienna. And then this second one here is a terracotta. And then that's just orange. And then of course, I have some other browns on hand, black and some white. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with this darker color, which is the burnt sienna. And this is going to be kind of a subtle effect. So I'm just going to take a little bit of my paint. And I also have a little shop towel. You can use paper towel or whatever, because I don't want to get it crazy saturated. But I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to add the coloration of that rust color in there. And primarily focusing on the centers with this particular color. So this is what I'm going to do with all of the blades. It's not dry, and it doesn't have to be, but I just want to give you a look at what I have done here. And this is how it looks. It's starting to dry. So when it starts to dry, it'll be a little bit darker, which is fine. Around the edges here and over a little bit in the blade, I very, very lightly, with a minimal amount of that burnt sienna paint, I just kind of went in there and smudged in some areas around here. That looks really cool. This bolt. And here's the other side. But it looks like rust. It looks like there's some real corrosion happening. Take a look at this one. So, not bad, not bad. We are going to address the handle. I'm not going to leave the handles like this. But with the next color, I'm going to try a little bit of this terracotta colored paint. Just add a little bit. And I think that's really going to bring out some more of that rust look. So I'm not covering all of the burnt sienna paint that I put on there. I'm just kind of going around like the edges. Just kind of, just a little bit on the edges, so that the centers remain that darker burnt sienna color, and then like right around the edges, it's that terracotta kind of a color. I think that's really making it look authentic. So right around these edges, with a very, very minute amount, again, of that terracotta colored paint, I'm just kind of going and I'm smearing outside of my textured sand areas. Because looking at photos of rust, this is basically how it looks. Like there's some corrosion where it's built up really thick, and then outside of those areas, it's kind of flat. There's not much texture. It's just beginning to discolor the metal. You could also use this technique to, make a rust quality or a rust appearance to anything that's metal that you want. So if you have like other kind of different types of displays that have metal and you want them to look all old, this is a very, very great, simple, and very effective technique to use for that. So this is that area where I sanded off the Made in China imprint. So I'm just going in and I'm just kind of lightly spreading the rust colors around in those areas. This is how it looks now after applying the terracotta in there. So yeah, it's looking pretty good. There's one more color that I'm going to add just a little bit of, and that's just a straight up orange. That's all it is. And I'm not going to put a whole lot in. I'm just going to, just here and there, dab some of that brighter orange. I don't want it to be like crazy overbearing looking, but we are creating rust, and there's a lot of orange and brown colors in rust. So I'm going to carry on doing that. All right, just want to give you a closer look at my blades here. So these are complete, the blade parts anyway. So if you are following along and you have gotten to this point, pat yourself on the back. Congratulations. You have effectively and officially created rust. All right, the last thing that we're going to work on are these handles. And then I'm going to attach some faux leather strap into these holes here for the handles. I'm just going to paint these handles using a variety of browns. But if you really, really wanted to amplify these blades and make these handles look a lot more realistic, other than just painting them is going to be fine. You could use epoxy. There's many different kinds of epoxy clays and things like that. This is a very good brand. If you're not familiar with it, it's Epoxy Sculpt. Of course, there's a part A and a part B, just like with all epoxies. This stuff, I've got 30 minutes and it's really sticky and moist and adhesive, so you could apply it. And then you have a working time basically of 1 to 2 hours. It's easy to work with within 1 to 2 hours of applying it. And now after 2 hours, when you're getting into that 2.5 hour, 3 hour mark, it's going to start to cure and set up and harden. And at that stage, you can really get in there with any kind of like a sculpting tool and put in some really good like wood grain texture. Then within 24 hours, that stuff, it cures completely and it's hard. It's hard like a rock. So it's very effective material to use. And on top of that, you can put this out in the elements. I mean, if you use anything, build anything with Epoxy Sculpt, it's completely waterproof. But we're not going to do that today. I'm just going to paint my handles. I'm going to start off with some burnt umber. And I'm just going to paint. And I did remove my bendable wire so that I could actually paint the entirety of the handle without the bendable wire getting in the way. All right, my dark brown paint is dry. And I'm going to use a couple different or 3 different varieties of brownish colored paint. I have a nutmeg brown, and then I have a coffee colored paint, and then I have a cinnamon colored paint. So I think I'm going to do the handles not all the same color. Probably change them up a little bit so that they're not all the same color. And maybe after applying some of this paint on here, I'll go back and I'll dry brush some of the other colors on. But just to start off with, and some of the black paint that was on these handles did come through after applying that burnt umber paint, which is fine. I don't mind that whatsoever. So I'm going to go ahead and just plow through the painting. And on this one, I'm going to use all three of these colors. And then on these other handles where I just painted them the one color, I'm just coming in with the remainder, a little bit of paint that I had left on my brush from painting that last one with all the different colors of the browns on there. And just add in a little bit here and there. Make it look more like a wood grain. This one needs to be a little bit darker. Let's add some darker paint in there. That one looks kind of cool. I kind of like that one just the way it is, with a lot of that black coming through. Still not happy with this one. I'm gonna add a little bit more. This is the burnt umber.
Boogeyman, who's the boogeyman? The boogeyman, the boogeyman, the boogeyman, the boogeyman.
All right, so these are done. I did put those faux leather like straps that I was going to attach to these handles. I put them on there. I didn't like the way they looked. They looked funny to me, so I removed them. One thing that I did do off camera, just to kind of see what it would look like, is I applied some fake blood. I don't really go in too much for the gore type stuff, but there are a lot of people that do, and that's perfectly fine. What I did was I had this from Spirit Halloween store, jug of blood. So it's not a full jug because it's been used for a lot of different things over the years. In fact, I think this jug is probably 10 years old. So I was really curious to see if it, I don't even know, does it have a shelf life? It doesn't seem to. So in some of these areas down here, I just, on one of the blades, I put in some of that. I kind of just let it drip off of a paintbrush on the edges there, and that's what it kind of looks like. This is still wet. Now, whether it looks pretty funny, and I have a feeling it's going to look really funny, that's why I only did it to one of these blades, but, you know, depending on how it looks, you know, I might do it to all of them, or, so right now, I can't recommend it. Can't recommend it, but it was something that I wanted to try. Other than that, I think this came out pretty good. Not bad at all. I actually found this exact set, does come in this exact set of 4 of these plastic blades on Amazon. and they cost $10. So if you're interested, do a search on Amazon for fake Halloween props or blades, and you're gonna find this. It's gonna come up. If you're interested, of course. And then, you know, you could do all these other techniques and more to them to make them look more authentic and more rustic and used, instead of these cheap plastic things. So anyway, that's going to be a wrap on this tutorial. If you have not subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button. We have a lot of tutorials that are already on the channel, and if those of you who have already watched them all, we're going to have a lot more that are underway as I speak right now. We are creating a lot more tutorials that's going to be coming your way. But on that note, as always, I thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.